From the front lines of community change to the heart of leadership, Francisco Ramos shows how stewardship turns awareness into action and neighbors into leaders.
All right, awesome. I'm excited to get started here.
All right.
So our guest today is Francisco Ramos, who's the Director of Community Organizing at New View Communities, and also leads the Steward Leadership Development Training Program over there as well. And you've been doing a lot of work in the community for many years. Please briefly share with me your background and how you got started.
I am the old international solidarity type, Rick. I became socially aware and politicized back at the end of the 80s, working as a volunteer for El Salvador. And I don't know how much you know of the 90s, but the civil wars in Central America, first in Nicaragua and then in El Salvador. I was working back then as a full-time volunteer with a church-based group, what people would call Christian-based communities.
Yeah.
And these Christian-based communities were in the middle of this civil war, and they were trying to build empowerment, basically. And they were organizing co-ops and helping families survive in the middle of this terrible situation.
Wow.
So I got connected to that process, and they invited me to help them raise monies for all these co-ops that they were building. And so back in 1990, we created a private foundation in Chicago, and we started raising monies. And that year we raised about $150,000.
Oh, wow.
Which for the currency in El Salvador, it became a lot of money.
Of course.
And they funded, brick making co-ops. We had a project that we called Bread and Milk Program. And we were giving a piece of bread and a glass of milk to all the children in a war zone in a specific part of the country. And so because that money came in, then they organized a milk producing co-op, and they built a bread making co-op to go along with it. So,
wow.
And so back from then, I learned my beginnings of community organizing. It was like watching community organizing on steroids.
Sure.
And then in 1990, peace treaties were signed between the insurgency, the government. The war came to an end, and the situation there became more community development, sort of a rebuilding sort of situation. And because the situation changed, it was not as intense. And so I'm originally from Mexico. I'm not Salvadoran, so my collaboration with my Salvadoran friends kind of grew in different directions. And part of what happened with me is I was living in Chicago, and I started discovering the communities in the U.S. I came to the U.S. in 83, so in 89, 90, I was recently new in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember visiting Catholic churches, talking to priests and saying, would you like to, gather school supplies for children in El Salvador? And they would look at me and say, why would I want to gather school supplies for kids in El Salvador? I have my own community here, and the kids need school supplies. And I used to ask, kids here need school supplies?
Mm-hmm.
This is the United States,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're telling me that in this community there are families and children that need school supplies? Yes, that's what I'm telling you. And I started discovering that it was something new for me. And so I started this conversation with my counterparts, my colleagues, my friends, and I said, we need to give something back to these communities. We need to work with these communities. We know this ability to organize that we're not using here, yet they need it. And they would tell me, no, you need to keep focused on El Salvador. Don't get distracted. El Salvador, it's El Salvador. And so I sustained that for a little bit, but then at the end I said, no, this is not right. And I decided to part ways. And I started then trying to apply those skills to these communities in Chicago.
Wow, powerful story.
Yeah.
Wow, very
Yeah.
powerful story.
Yeah.
So you were living it firsthand, helping families literally put bread on the table,
Oh yes, literally.
literally.
Yes.
And then you realize that
Yeah.
America also had its own systemic issues.
Yeah.
And you started
That's
getting
correct.
involved.
Yeah.
Now share with me how your story of when you joined a New View Communities and how you sort of got engaged with them.
When I joined New View Communities, that was back in 2018. Uh, was some of the very first conversations I had with the leadership in the agency were along the lines of, "You're a community organizer, yes. We've been doing community organizing for many years, yes. And in the past, when we have done community organizing, we kind of have run into trouble because, you know, what people call here traditional organizing, quote unquote, is power based, building power, and then you build power in the community and you find targets, right? You find social issues and then you look for targets, people that are going to deliver the answer that you're asking for, and then you kind of force their hand basically by having power in the community. And so they told me, you know, that is not going to work in Fitchburg because in Fitchburg, we're already in partnership with the city government. You know, they had this project called Reimagine North of Main, and the city was a partner in that Reimagine North of Main project. And so they asked me, they said, "Do you know another way of organizing?"
So it's a different perspective because you're used to going at it from a perspective of, you know, you're looking for change makers and
Right.
you're looking to influence them.
Right.
Right. Whereas here you already have the infrastructure
Yeah.
already set up where there's an existing relationship and it's a peaceful one and you
Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
provide resources to
Yeah.
collaborate.
Exactly.
Am I understanding
That's
that?
exactly correct. And you know, traditional community organizing kind of leads toward a bottleneck, right? And the bottleneck is the influential person or the influential body that you want to influence.
Yeah.
Legislative advocacy. A lot of community organizing in this country goes towards pushing the hand of the legislators to create policy, what they call systemic change, right? My experience and my formation came from Latin America, where, you know, we know the power is in the people. And social change is really in the policies. It's one way, right? But really social change is in the awareness and the consciousness of the person that's changing when you are working with them. And the more they change, the more their families change. And the more their families change, the more the community changes. And those changes in the community really are the fundament for power. And once somebody is awake and aware of their rights, it will never go back.
Oh, I
Yeah.
love the way you phrase that, and
Yeah.
I 100% agree with you.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how a conversation of someone who's woke
Mhm.
is very different.
Right.
Because you're talking to someone who's actively aware of what rights are being deprived
Mhm.
and is aware that that's not okay, right? So that creates like you know, sort of like an interesting topic of like stewardship,
Mhm.
of like self responsibility, of someone who feels like not so much an entitled but a responsibility
Yeah.
to do something about it. Am I right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So what is it that you're kind of seeing in our communities with the current people in our communities that are starting to wake up and start to realizing their rights and they're starting to advocate? What are some of the trends and patterns that you're noticing?
Well, you know, I think that it goes beyond rights. Um, you know, the talking about rights still has to do with this policy and this
Mm.
framework, right?
Hmm.
Where they place you. I believe that it goes to potentiality, to human potential. Um, the system, the social system, not only deprives you of your rights, it deprives you of your potentiality to reach the full potential that you have within you. And so when people become woke, it's not only understanding their rights, they also understand their potential, and they realize that the dreams they have in their mind and in their heart, that it is actually possible to reach them and to build them, right? And so once they discover that, you have leaders, you have people with potential, you have people that are going to pursue those dreams and that are going to work really hard to make them a reality. And so that is what's happening in Fishwork. We started with anyway, going back to this conversation with the leadership of the VH agency.
Yeah.
They said, do you know a different way? And I said, yes, I know a different way. And it has to do with leadership development, right? It's not so much a power-based dynamic. It's leadership development. And so, and how would you do that? Well, we would develop little trainings that would bring people, and people, when you put people together, some things happen.
Yeah.
I learned that a long time ago. And these, you organize these trainings one after one after one after one, and then you take a break and you celebrate together, and people kind of measure their growth. They become aware of their growth, and then you continue going with all the trainings. And the trainings are designed to be one step ahead of the people, right, as they grow, and to keep them growing, to keep them motivated to continue growing. And so in 2018 we started with one group. Another thing that happened there is, when I was organizing in Chicago for 20 years, we used different terminologies for how do you call the community leaders, right? Depending on the trainings, we called some leaders promoters, community health promoters, right? But we also call them advocates, or they are legal advocates. They are, workers' rights advocates, and so on. We also call them activists, and so on. Different. But when I came to New View, they had this tradition. They called the leaders stewards. I don't know why they call them stewards, but they had that tradition of calling them stewards. And I thought, that's interesting, because the stewards go beyond the concept of advocate, right? A steward, an advocate is somebody who helps another person. A steward is somebody that gives of himself or herself without expecting something in return. Selflessly, right? And so I said, that's fine. And so we started calling them stewards. We had that first training of stewards in 2018. We graduated 10 community residents back then and when. That was kind of like a pilot project. We were kind of experimenting. But in 2019, we sat down and we made a plan. And we said, we are going to offer 3 stewards cohorts in the spring, 3 in the summer, and 3 in the fall and winter every year. So 9 of them.
Okay.
And we are going to design these steward trainings around topics that are around social issues that need attention. So the question then was, what social issues need attention, right? And we started talking about public schools, public health, access to food, and so on. And we started developing trainings. We created a public education stewards training, which started with a group of 5 women from the community. And then we created a public health stewards training, and so on. And we started, okay, if we have this topic, who would we invite to be the speakers, right? Who would we invite to present, and what would they present, and so on. We developed curricula for those trainings, and then we started recruiting members in the community. And one of the things that were present in Fisher is there was a lot of tension between the school system and parents. Parents were not happy back then in 2019. They were really frustrated and they were really unhappy, especially parents that had children with special needs. They were really upset. They were really fed up with the system because the system was kind of not responding to what they were saying. And so they were eager. When we had the first training, they were eager. They came. We involved, we said we have a university in town with a school of education, right? And which they claim is one of the best school of educations in the state. So we invited some professors from the School of Education to teach. And, these professors in the School of Education are still involved. They're super excited about what they're doing. But as a result of that, we started developing leaders. And part of my work as a community organizer is while community residents are going through the trainings, I kind of go to the side and I start having one-on-one meetings with them. And I start asking them questions, if this training is successful, what would you like to see in this community happening, right? In other words, what's in your heart?
Mm.
And through that process, they kind of think about it. They kind of start conceptualizing change. And so these leaders are still there, and the leaders that were involved in 2019 are stewards that are leading Fishwork in many ways,
Wow.
right? We put together another thing that was happening with Newview was they were planning this Fish for Arts community,
Yeah.
the former BF Ramos school. And they knew that this was artist preference housing, and they knew that they wanted to create an artist community in the building. So they needed to identify artists. And so we created back then something called Art Stewards. It was a cohort the goal was to try to identify artists in the local community and bring them together, and through time build a network of artists. And so we started in 2019 with this training, and we have implemented through the years, I believe, like 12 cohorts of the Art Stewards.
Excellent. Wow.
And we have a network of about 100 local artists in an Art Stewards network, right? And so the artists that came, again, some of the issues that these artists were talking about when they joined were there's a lot of discrimination in Fitchburg. And there is especially discrimination against minorities, right? There is no access for African American artists to activities and to resources and so on. And so right now, nowadays, artists of color are the ones that are pushing, are the ones that are leading. They have grown in expertise, they have grown in relationship building. We have implemented what we call an organizer steward training, where I kind of teach this very basic skills of community organizing.
Yeah.
You need to do one-on-ones, you need to, and they have learned and they are doing that, they're applying it. And so there is a really, really good movement of stewards. So we're at the point right now at Newview where we're thinking, to make a long story short, we have trained and graduated more than 500 stewards.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you, in 7 years. And so we're at the point, and the stewards not only, more and more we're seeing that it's, the mayor of Fishburne is a steward, right? We have one of the members of the city council that's a steward. We have one head of the department in Fishburne is a steward. And so we're starting to think about how do we push this network with all the relationships they have under their belt, right, to really create social change in the city.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, stewards are at a different level of awareness, different level of development, but there are some of them that are very sophisticated at this point. And right now next week, we are going to start a training that we call the Affordable Housing Stewards. And we are targeting the community residents in the region that are already serving in zoning committees, in housing committees.
Oh, wow.
And we're inviting them, and we already have a group. We have an action group that is planning, because that's what I do. Once they graduate, once the cohort graduates, I invite them to stick around and help, create the future. And we have a group already that is actually kind of inviting their colleagues. And so these, people we have a member of the Community Foundation of North Central Massachusetts that just joined the cohort.
That's amazing.
So
yeah.
We're really having stewards that are in positions of leadership. And so we're at that point. What do we do with this leadership, right? so that we just not continue repeating these trainings and repeating these trainings, but actually capitalize on the leadership that is at the table. Anyway, that's how it was born.
No, that's beautiful. And with the work that we're doing at My Path to Safe Housing Initiative, it aligns very closely to that because we feel that by educating homeowners and giving them the tools that they need to make informed decisions when hiring contractors, doing work around their home, it starts with individuals learning, how the process works, how to advocate for themselves. And what we find is that as people go through the program, they want to teach other people.
Yeah.
Right. And it becomes once you know something and once you've learned something and it's helped you, a selfless thing, stewardship, right, is passing it forward and helping other people on there. And I love the work that you guys are already doing. I mean, you've already worked with over 500 people through the stewardship program, which is incredible. And what would you say is the next thing for you guys as far as homeowners and homeowners' rights? Because I understand that you guys are working on the advocacy program for those homeowners, but what's next for them? Is it to put them on the path of homeownership? Or are they already homeowners? What do you envision as the next step for those stewards?
Well, as a community organizer, right? When I come to a new city, when I'm new to a city, and I've been new to a city many, many times, right? I kind of start identifying what's happening in this city, right? And I kind of assess the level of community organizing that's there. And I have identified that organizations that say we do community organizing, they really don't do community organizing. What they do is something along the lines of community mobilization to benefit the organization, right? So if they develop leaders to serve the organization, to increase the capacity of the organization, and that's really not community organizing.
Okay.
So when I come to when I came to Fitchburg, I realized right away there is no homeowners association. There is one. There is a regional homeowners association with very, very low capacity of service and empowerment. Right?
So I want to dive in a little bit. And sorry for interrupting you, but I just want to clarify the term homeowner association because oftentimes when we think of them, we think about them in the sense of like condo associations,
right,
where they have a homeowners association there
right,
and they kind of tell you the rules of how things work.
Right.
Do you mean it in that sense, or is it a little bit of a different capacity?
I mean it in the sense of advocating for yourself.
Perfect.
The homeowners who are aware of the power of the collective.
So an association of homeowners within the community who are seeing issues within their community that is affecting other people and they're doing something about it.
Right. Starting with their own homes, right? Because if they own homes in the same community, they're bound to face the same problems.
Yeah.
Whether it's the water that comes into their homes, whether it's the utility services, which is a big problem in Fitchburg.
Yeah.
Whether it's
and in Clinton.
and in Clinton, yeah.
And almost every town we visit, right?
Yeah. And it's part of the social system, how the social system is organized, right? The windows, right? They're facing the same weather.
Land,
and so on, land, and And so by advocating for their property and for their well-being inside that property, if they are organized together, they have more capacity than individually. They have more capacity for negotiation. They might be able to purchase home insurance as a group. They might be able to, you name it, right? So when they discover the power of the collective, their life improves.
I love that. How do people get involved with homeowner associations?
Well, they need 3 leaders that go to the state and register their association, and then you have a homeowners association. And then you build it from there.
Awesome. So it's honestly just that initial initiative.
Yeah. You just need 3 individuals, at least 3. Well, now they tell me it's 4. You need at least 4 individuals who are aware that if they get together and advocate for their needs and, together, they have more power. They'll do better. And so those 4 people then structure this association, this organization, this mutual, this co-op or whatever, and then invite other people. It's all we are so organized to say the power is in the relationships, right?
Yeah.
You have the relationship of the ground. Invite the people that you have relationships with to join, and educate them about their mission and so on, and it happens.
That's beautiful.
And there is no need to have only one in the city. Nothing prevents people from organizing one. So there might be 5, 6, 7, 8, 10. The more there are, the better the city is organized and so on. But the same that happens with homeowners happens with everything.
Mm-hmm.
Parents in the school system. Nobody knows that parents can get organized and then negotiate with the school system collectively.
Yeah.
That's a big realization that people are not aware of. And so on. Public health, you can negotiate public health services.
It's an interesting perspective because oftentimes we feel that we have to face these challenges on our own.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you have the means, using the legal system to do that,
Mm-hmm.
right? The challenge with the legal system is that it's incredibly expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes we feel like the legal system is benefiting themselves, not our association.
Yeah.
Which is not always the case. There's oftentimes, very committed, legal experts that are giving back to their communities. But oftentimes it's very transactional. So what you're describing sounds relatively straightforward, is being able to put together a group of 4 people that are very passionate about their rights and advocating for themselves, and may all be experiencing similar issues, and they come together, maybe once a week, once a month, to kind of meet on where they're currently at with those current issues that they're facing.
Yeah.
And then look for other people that may be facing similar circumstances. And now you're talking about a true association forming just that simply.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Which is pretty incredible. So thank you for sharing that perspective. I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us today. This was a really, really, really great interview, and I've learned so much about you and the work that you're doing. And quite frankly, wow, the way that you've been able to reach out to over 500 different stewards, inspire them to take initiative, and how you're now in the process of developing homeowner associations and working with other leaders in the community, working with the mayor, and the work that New View Community is doing as a collective is pretty incredible. On there. Thank you so much for joining us. It was an absolute pleasure. We look forward to having future conversations with you.
Thank you.
And congratulations on all of your accomplishments.
It's an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Yep. Thank you.